The bar was loud that afternoon, filled with the smell of sizzling burgers, spilt beer, and the dry heat rolling in from the dusty roadside. Everyone was laughing, shouting, clinking bottles. Yet the single moment that would silence the entire bar began with the slam of a heavy boot and the sharp scrape of a leather jacket across old wooden floors. A towering biker marched in, face bruised from road fights, tattoos crawling up his neck like old stories etched in ink. His presence sucked the air out of the room, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared anyone for what he was about to do. Within minutes, the biker would grab the waitress by the arm, rip her shirt straight down the back, and reveal something that froze the whole bar in a stunned, breathless silence. But before that moment of shock, that moment where truth burst open like daylight through storm clouds, everything seemed like just another rough afternoon. No one knew they were seconds away from seeing the side of pain. No one ever talks about pain, hidden behind polite smiles and borrowed uniforms, if you believe that kindness and second chances truly matter in this world. Please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness. Spark your support brings these powerful stories to life. The waitress's name was Marina Holt, a soft-eyed 28-year-old who worked double shifts to pay for her younger brother's school fees and her mother's treatments. She had the kind of presence that made people feel understood, even when she said nothing. Most customers only saw her warm smile and efficient grace, but they never noticed her flinching whenever someone raised their hand too quickly or whenever she felt fast footsteps behind her. Today she moved with extra caution, her back stiff under her plain light blue work shirt, her hand slightly trembling each time she lifted a tray. Her co-workers noticed she'd arrived with a fresh bruise peeking just under her collar, but no one had the courage to ask. They all suspected where it came from, but the rules of small towns were strict. People pretended not to see what hurt the most. When the biker walked in that day, his name was Reeves Calder, known in the region for his short temper, his wild riding, and his reckless fights. He wasn't a bad man deep down, but life had made him rough around the edges, too. Ruff, the bar owner, an elderly man named Carver Jonas, watched Reeves with an anxious eye. Reeves had been showing up more frequently these days, drinking longer, staying later, and anger simmered under his skin like a pot ready to boil. Carver sensed something dangerous brewing, but he didn't know how close the explosion actually was. Marina approached Reeves's table as she always did, with quiet politeness, and her tray held steady. She placed his order down without making eye contact. Reeves stared at her for a moment, his jaw tightening as if something about her triggered an unresolved memory. Maybe it was the fragile way she carried herself, maybe it was the tremble she hid behind professionalism, or maybe it was the faint scar he could now notice under her collar, the one she kept pulling her shirt to cover. Whatever it was, something inside him snapped, but not in a way anyone expected. He stood abruptly, grabbing Marina's arm, not violently but firmly enough to cause her to gasp. People around them stiffened, ready to intervene, but Reeves' eyes weren't angry. They were confused, almost haunted. Then it happened. Reeves pulled at her shirt, ripping the back seam in one sudden motion. Gasps shot across the bar as fabric tore, and Marina froze, her breath trapped in her chest. The room fell deathly silent, not because of the aggression, but because of what the torn shirt revealed. Across Marina's back were healing marks, bruises in fading stages, some yellow, some purple, and near her shoulder blade was a small, ugly burn scar shaped like an old cigarette press. These were not injuries caused by random accidents. These were marks of long-term cruelty, and suddenly, everyone in the bar understood why she moved like she was made of thin glass. Reeves stepped back as though he'd seen a ghost. He wasn't angry at Marina, he was angry at the world he thought he had left behind his tough exterior. Reeves had grown up in a home filled with violence. His father had been the kind of man who believed pain was a tool for control, and Reeves had spent his childhood flinching the same way Marina did. He had sworn he'd never become that man, swearing to break every cycle that tried to strangle him. But seeing Marina's wounds reopen memories, he fought fiercely to bury. Marina collapsed to her knees, trying desperately to pull her ripped shirt around her back. Tears streamed silently down her face, not from the physical pain, but from the humiliation of having her darkest secret exposed. Carver rushed to her, placing his jacket over her shoulders with trembling Hands, the other customers, exchanged uncomfortable glances. Shame settling into their chests, they realized that they too had failed her by pretending not to see the signs. Reeves stood frozen, guilt spreading across his face like wildfire. He didn't know how to undo what he'd just done. Even though his intention hadn't been to harm, he had reacted impulsively, trying to confirm a suspicion that now left him feeling hollow. The bar remained still. Even the loud rock music had stopped, as if the speakers themselves refused to interrupt the moment Marina finally whispered through shaky breaths that she needed to go home. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the air, to escape the shame crushing her chest. But before she reached the door, Reeves spoke, not loudly, not aggressively, but with raw sincerity. His voice carried across the silence like a heavy confession. He told the room he recognized the marks because they were once carved onto him too. He said he hadn't meant to hurt her, but his impulse came from a place of fear of watching someone live in the same hell he once escaped. Carver watched Marina hesitate, her back stiffening under his jacket. People expected her to scream at Reeves, to throw something, to run, but Marina simply stood there shaking, caught between pain and confusion. Reeves' admission didn't excuse his action, but it cracked open a small space of understanding. Marina had lived in quiet suffering for so long that hearing someone else speak from experience felt strangely disarming. Outside, the warm afternoon sun glowed across the parking lot, and Marina walked out with slow steps, each one heavy with judgment she imagined people placing on her butt. As she leaned against the wall, catching her breath, she heard Reeves approach behind her cautiously, leaving a respectful distance for a while. Neither